Welcome back to another battle report, folks. I'm going to be rolling out the Romanians again, still using the Axis Allies Migration book. Question for you. What happens when a Romanian Panzer IV list with armoured infantry in support comes up against a German Panzer IV list with armoured infantry in support? We're going to find out. But hold on a minute. What's that? Tom's bringing a bloody elephant. Well folks, welcome back to the channel. As you've seen from the intro, we're doing Panzer IVs against Panzer IVs today. It might be a terrible game, but it could be a really interesting game. So Tom's back on the channel. I'll go through my list first. Oh, sorry, hello Tom.
Oh, hi.
We've already done our intros, folks, but we'll do this for the camera. Hello, right. So, I'll go over my list and then we'll go to Tom for his list. So, as I said before, I'm using my Romanians. I've got a Panzer IV formation, which is company commanded 2 tanks and then 3 platoons of 3, and part of that formation is a 7 base armoured motorised infantry platoon in half tracks, and they've got a Faust and a Shrek. That's the core formation. And then backing them up, I have got a motorised infantry platoon on foot who've got a Shrek and a Faust. And remember, these motorised platoons, guys, have got MGs, so the rate of fire 3 or 2 pinned or moving. So that's in support motorised infantry. A platoon of the 3, I think they call them M43s, or the attack Resita anti-tank guns with anti-tank 13, range 36, and then 3 TACAM T60s, anti-tank 12, range 32, 3 points armour on the front. Then with an observer as well, I've got a platoon or a battery of 4 100 mils. They are anti-tank 3, firepower 3 in bombardments. Then a quick word on training. We've got the Peasants Army rule, so things may improve for my guys, but the tanks are careful, confident, green, with a last stand of 5+. Now that could improve with the Peasant Army rule. And then everything else is careful, confident, trained, with a last stand of 5+. And then the Peasant Army rule is when I put something on the table, when it's deployed either on the table or in ambush or comes in from reserve, I roll a dice and a 5 or a 6, my 5+ last stand goes to a 4 and my skill rating can improve. And one other thing, the infantry, both types of infantry, hit on a 3+ in assault. So, very German but very Romanian flavour. Tom, what have you got in your list?
Right, so, hi everyone. I've gone for a Panzer IV formation from the Migration book. This formation's quite interesting in that the second core platoon can be a Panzer Grenadier platoon, so it gives your formation a bit more beef to it, and you also get access to the fancy Wirbelwinds and Ostwinds AA. So I've got 9 Panzer IVs in total, so 2 in the HQ, 4 in the first platoon, 3 in the second platoon. I then have a mechanised Panzer Grenadier platoon, and they come with a Panzer Faust and a Panzer Shrek. And then I have 3 Wirbelwinds, which are quad AA 2cm guns on a Panzer IV chassis. They look very cool. Whether they'll be any good or not, I don't know, but we'll see. And then in support, I have a Best battery with a Panzer III OP. I've got 2 Recce troops. One's a 5cm Puma, and then the other one's a 2cm Puma scout troop. And then finally, I have an elephant. So rocking that big thing. Hopefully that'll do some good. And then I've got a number of wild cards. So firstly, I'm 16th Panzer Division, which means I get a point reduction on my core formation units, but I go from a tactics rating from a 3 to a 4. I've then upgraded my infantry to be Panzer Pioneer, which allows them to cross minefields on the 2+, and they can also dig in on the 2+. That kind of mitigates the 16th Panzer rule. I'd never leave home without that if I'm playing Germans. I've got a lucky card, and then lastly I've got Wilhelm Burnett, I think he's called. And basically he's on the HQ Panzer IV, and he just allows me to reroll 1 reserve dice every turn. But if that's successful, I can only bring on tank teams. But since everything's a tank, I'm presuming, I haven't read this from Lessons from the Front, but I'm presuming if my mechanised infantry are in the half tracks, they'll count as tanks for that rule, but I won't be able to march them on foot, is what my understanding would be. They would have to come on in the half tracks.
Sounds about right. Because they do deploy from reserve together, so sounds about right.
Yeah. And that's it. I'm hoping that the scouts can kind of give me some dominate some parts of the battlefield that I want to do, and then hopefully a bit of combined arms will win the day.
Right, well, it's combined arms on both sides, so let's see what the hell happens. We'll go over to the lists now, folks, and let you look at them on the table before we move on to the mission. Tom's Corps formation. You've got company command, platoon of 3 and a platoon of 4 Panzer IVs. His Panzer Grenadiers, and a bit of proxy in there. Sorry about that, folks. I'd like to get time to paint my own Werbelwinds, but these mobile wagons are the Werbelwinds. Then in support, the Wesps with an observer, the big bad elephant, a couple of Pumas, and these we're using as the 20mm version of the Puma. Wee bit of proxying again, folks. But there you go, Tom's compact, tough, veteran German armour list. So my core formation, folks, is this lot here. You've got a company command of 2 Panzer IVs, 3 platoons of 3 Panzer IVs, a 7 base Panzer Grenadier platoon, so that's 4 half tracks. Then in support we have 3 of the 75mm tank guns, 3 unfortunately unpainted at this moment, apologies people, TACAM T60s, though there's an actual T60 in there because I can't get the third T60 yet. The 100mm battery and a platoon of 7 bases of the motorised infantry with a wee Shrek in there. So there you go. Not sure how they'll play, but that's my Romanian Panzer IV list. Let's take a look at the Panzer IVs. This is what this game's really all about. Now you probably know what the stats are for a Panzer IV, but I'll put them on the screen on the side now. So let's talk about the crews. That's the difference here, guys, Germans and Romanians. So both are rated as careful, both are rated as confident. The Germans have a 3+ last stand, but due to the peasant army rule, the Romanians have a 5+ last stand, so a big difference there. The remount of 3+ for protected ammo is the same for both. And then for training, the Germans are veteran, but the Romanians are green. So that's a big difference between the two. Now, in terms of special rules, the Germans have the Stormtrooper rule, so they get to do 2 tactical moves, 2 movement orders. The Romanians do not. The Romanian special rule is the peasant army rule, where they can get a last stand of 4+ and a skill level of 4+. So they've got a chance of being a bit better, but in the main are likely to be weaker in last stand, very much weaker in testing, and they don't have the advantage of being able to make the 2 movement orders. And that is reflected in points, which accounts for the larger number of Panzer IVs you'll see in this game, and there could be even more if I wanted to skew the list that way. I'll stick the points up on the side for a platoon of 3 because that's another difference. The Romanians can only have up to a maximum of 3 tanks in the platoon with a last stand of 5+. That's a bit of a dodgy situation, and the Germans can have up to 5 tanks in the platoon. So folks, let's see how they compare in a game. So when working out the tactics, I chose attack and Tom chose manoeuvre. We rolled counter-attack, and with me choosing attack, I'm the attacker and Tom's the defender in this game. Now, you can see this is one of these quarter-based games where both of us start in a quarter, and in this case the objectives are split between 2 different quarters. It's one of those quite awkward games to lay out. Choosing your quarters is so critical in this game in terms of terrain. For instance, as a defender, you need to have terrain you're confident of moving into to be sure you can get there safely, because you'll be under fire. You'll be moving but under fire. Now, I'm just going to show you here. My deployment will be in the adjacent, not diagonally opposite, but adjacent quarter. Not diagonally opposite, because that is where the defender's reserves will arrive. So there's so many different possibilities for how terrain can affect your choice of deployment area in this game. Now, the defender starts on an objective but also has to move to another one, which means this is the kind of mission where the objectives do not become live until turn 6, and that's where the attacker can win if they hold an objective at the end of any turn thereafter, or the defender likewise if there is no attacker within 8 inches any turn thereafter. Special rules are quite simple. It's ambush for the defender and immediate reserves, and it has pre-ranged in markers to be placed as well. So, by its nature, it can be a very mobile battle. Let's see what happens with all these medium tanks and see what zones are chosen for deployment. So folks, deployment. Now this is a crazy kind of deployment zone to show on the table. There's so much going on, but the most critical thing is Tom chose to defend here and I chose to attack there. Tom's reserves will come on over there in that corner. Now he put an objective down here. This is the objective, and that's meant to be a semicircle. Kind of goes like that. Put one there. Over here I've put one there, and it's once again that kind of semicircle. My deployment is quite a small box over there. Now, in reserve, Tom has got Pumas, Panzer Grenadiers, 4 Panzer IVs, so there's a lot of strong stuff in reserve. 3 Panzer IVs in ambush. The wee 20mm Pumas and the did a wee scouty move thing, spearhead move. Wearable Winds, Company Command, Big Bad Elephant, Observer, and Wisps. So that's what's in that deployment zone, and I imagine there'll be an ambush coming in around about here somewhere. And I'm basically in that corner just going, oh, what the hell? I'm going that way, so I might as well just keep going. And that's it, folks. So it's a very confusing layout, but basically Tom is starting here, potentially having to move to here. I have got to fight my way through either diagonally or straight ahead towards those objectives, whilst Tom's reserves could be coming in along here. So that could start getting me in the flank in my vulnerable side armour, because Romanian Panzer IVs ain't got any better side armour, folks. So there you go, and we'll come back at the end of turn 1. So Romanian turn 1, forgot to mention, folks, the peasant army rule. It's probably the most significant thing about the Romanians, but I keep forgetting. Now, out of everything that I rolled only got one unit with improved skill and last standing. That's those infantry there. Everything else is just 5 up last stand and either green for the tanks or trained for everything else. And in terms of movement, I've just charged and followed me. Everybody managed to follow me apart from the infantry and the half-tracks. And then in shooting, I couldn't get any sort of leverage against these Wesps, so they're going to punish me next turn. I just ranged in here, in the vain hope of him rolling a 1 and me bailing out his Ferdinand. Didn't happen. So that's it for me. We'll see if Tom can unleash the gates of hell on my advancing army here in his turn 1. So Tom's turn 1. So starting off with ambushes, he put his platoon of 3 here, firing down the road. Didn't get reserves. He's got his reserve special rule, but I didn't manage to get them in this turn. And then in terms of other movement, the Wesps blitzed out and then the shooting scooted back. We'll come to the shooting in a minute. He's just getting off the hill because it's a bit dangerous up there. These guys moved along. They couldn't get any further forward because of the Panzer IVs. One of them's moved subsequently. And then the shooting, these guys fired, got 3 hits, 1 kill, 1 bail. The company command, blitzed by the way over to here, fired and managed to get got a kill over here on this platoon. The Ferdinand also got a hit and a kill. Then the West killed a couple of half-tracks. 1 base inside the half-tracks died and they're pinned. And shooting and scooting all over the place now. The Ferdinand, to shoot at these guys, had to turn its flank to the TACAMs. It rolled a 1 for its shoot and scoot, but then a lucky card was burned. So he's managed to get himself out of the immediate danger zone. And then everyone else managed shooting scoots except for the company command, but you know, if they moved in, these guys couldn't move and so on. It was very, very tight in there. So lots and lots of dead Panzer IVs on the Romanian side, and no doubt there's going to be some motivations coming up. Romanian turn 2. So in terms of motivation, my company commander's in a good position, though I didn't really need it. The guys, bailed out guy managed to get back in, survivor stayed. These guys out there by themselves managed to unpin, and as you can see they've kept moving up. The guys blitzed around the hill. These guys tactically moved. 1 tank stayed put, the other, because it was blocked by that, and that stayed still. I forgot to fire my artillery, we'll come back to that. Right, in terms of shooting, these fired down the road, got a hit, but they're given this Maker Panzer IV the better armour, bing, bounced on a 6. Then the attack sitters on the hill fired down, managed to kill 1. And then over here there was a lot of shooting. There was 2 dice from him, 3 from there, 4 from there, but in the end there wasn't a lot of hits, but there was another save, but 1 of the company command died. And then the TACAM T60s coming into hell managed to get a kill and 2 bails on these guys. Somebody stuck a Shrek out of the top of one of these half-tracks, pointed in the general direction and actually managed to kill 1. And then it was assault time. A couple of guys moved up, so I had a Shrek and a Faust to attack the Ferdinand, and because I went in on this side, he's got a forward firing MG, I believe, so no counter fire. Wasn't close enough to anything that was still alive, and the Faust missed. The Faust always miss. Shrek hit, but he saved. I think he rolled a 6. Broke off though, and so I captured a remaining bailed out Wisp. But I'm kind of hanging about in the open here with most things still alive and pointing at me, and reserves probably coming next turn. Forgot to do the artillery and all that, guys. We'll just do that and then we'll go over to Tom for his turn 2. Tom's turn 2. Can't believe it's just turn 2, folks. He got reserves on and they're in this corner here, so they're flying up that road. In terms of movement, these guys just keeping themselves out of sight as much as possible, getting away from that marker there. He did cross here orders to get these guys from here over to here. Oh, never made it. Everything else stayed put. Oh, sorry, he moved a little bit further over to just keep edging away from things and get some machine gun shots. So in terms of shooting, he, super duper observer, managed to snipe off the Shrek, which was a great shot. He, super duper Ferdinand, managed to bail a TACAM T60, which is not such a great shot. Then in terms of other shooting, there was a few hits. There was only 1, 2, 3 tanks could shoot, but there's quite a few hits out with that. They both got hit. One was a bail and one was a save. And then over here he got a couple of hits. One saved, one failed, one dead. So they're down to 2. And next turn, the last reserves will be coming on, which is the Pumas. We'll see what he can do with aim. But at the moment it's getting all very tight in here, but I'm starting to run out of Panzer IVs. Motivations could be critical again next turn. So Romanian turn 3. So in that turn I was fine for motivations, except this guy did not get back in. In terms of movement, the infantry moved up into a position to assault the elephant. A couple managed to get around the side with the Shrek and the Faust. And then the TACAM T60s moved around the side too. And then in terms of shooting, I actually managed to bail the poor wee elephant out with a Faust. So it just died in the assault phase. And the guys consolidated up a little bit. These guys tried to dig in, by the way, and they're the veteran guys, so they didn't. And then in terms of shooting, the company command got blown out of that tank, into that tank, and then blown out of that tank, into that tank, and then blown out of that tank, into that tank. So all the Panzer IVs are gone. Arranged in here, but didn't get any off these guys, but that's a useful wee arranged in marker for subsequent turns. And I managed a few shooting scoops just to try and point myself against any potential flank attacks from there. So a bit of progress for me that turn. We've got the reserves coming in now though. German turn 3, sorry. Pumas, last of the reserves, arrived automatically and they've shot up the road. I should take those markers off. Shot up the road to there, and these guys have just kept blitzing up, trying to keep out of line of sight as much as possible. So this is the reserves, try to take on, push me off that objective. Now, that really just left a crazy observer he just kicks arse and never dies, plus the wearable ones. Now, he managed to get a couple of hits down range, but no kills. These guys were shooting at the nearer unit 2, were got to ground, 3 hits, but no failed saves at all. So that was it for shooting for the Germans this turn. I've got a bit of breathing space. Let's see if I can get myself ready to deal with these guys that are moving up, and maybe even dig in there with my 3 up special spade veterans. Romanian turn 4. So in that turn, TACAM T60 got back in. He didn't run away with the help of the company command, keeping within 6 inches. The guys actually dug in. These guys, apart from one base who couldn't get in, remounted and moved up. And in terms of shooting, I just concentrated everything on what was left here really. Company command and one of them, and these 2 here. And I managed to get everything, but I couldn't get him. Last few dice rolls failed. Quite a few dice rolls failed to hit him. This eventually got knocked out by one of them that's just in range and no more. And that's it for me. So these guys are going to come up and start contesting the objective in the next turn or so. I need to kill that in one of these platoons to break Tom's unit, but that's a big ask, and he can easily come charging back at me. So over to Tom to see what he can do. Sorry, I forgot to say the company commander died in there. He never managed to swap over to another vehicle, so the company commander's away. Tom's turn 4. The wearable wind stayed. The infantry dismounted and sent half tracks away because there's no space to move anything here. And they moved into here, tried to follow me into there, but didn't do it. So the commander's in there, the rest of the platoon's in here. These tanks, because of the restricted space once again, 2 have moved up into firing position. Then in terms of shooting, that tried to shoot, the half tracks got 1 hit and bailed it out. These guys fired up the road with 2 shots, needing 5, got 1 hit and killed him. So that platoon's down to just 1 tank. Oh, incidentally, the Puma tried to get around the flank there but failed its cross check, but it's not a very good cross check for a Puma. So no shooting from these this turn because of the follow me. So that's it. This turn I bailed out half track, dead Panzer IV, but I've got to try and get rid of these guys now. Romanian turn 5. So in terms of motivation, surviving tank from the road platoon ran off. The other survivor stayed. He didn't get back in. They just stayed put. In terms of shooting, there was a hell of a lot of shooting, but not a hell of a lot of dead. He's still alive. He got 6 dice from the attack arm to 60s. All missed. I lifted the artillery from here and put it onto here. Loads and loads of hits, but they all saved. And then these guys all fired, got an absolute bucketload of hits again, but they all saved. These guys here got absolutely hammered. The amount of dice that went in, but he survived just with a bail. The artillery's ranged in here now, by the way. So he's still in the game. He's still alive. He can get back in there easy. There'll be like another tank in there to go firing back up that road at me. So could have gone worse for the Germans that turn. Could have gone better for me. And quite importantly, that guy in there is within 8 inches off the objective. Quick editor's note. It can be a bit confusing in this game if you're actually the attacker or the defender. Tom's a defender and he's got to be within 4 inches off the objective. That 8-inch thing is to do with victory conditions for the defender, and 8 inches applies to the attacker. Well, folks, at that point, Tom's decided to call it a day. I think it was just a matter of time before his formation did break. He would have to stay in that bomb alley, so to speak, where the attackers sitters with their anti-tank 13 were firing down, the surviving Panzer IVs were firing down. I maybe could have lost a couple of platoons of Panzer IVs, but I don't think it would have been enough to stop me destroying one more platoon of Panzer IVs, and that would break the formation because the Weber wind legged it as well. So we're just going to call it a day. Tom, what's your thoughts on the game and on your list?
Yeah, well, I made a couple of critical errors in the deployment and the my reserve allocation. So by putting my infantry in reserve, it meant that I just had a bit of a gaping hole in my defence, really, that allowed Frank, who capitalised on it really well, just to charge forward and funnel units in. And I tried to cover too much of the other objective, where I really just should have thought, well, if Frank wants to go for it, let him, and really concentrate my units, like my verbal wins, for example, maybe behind the hill or around the hedge or something like that, just to really delay an infantry advance. But I didn't do that, and then I just created a pile of headaches for myself, some really restrictive ambushes. Got involved with a tank duel, which the opening volley was somewhat in my favour, but I got quickly overwhelmed. And then it was just I ended up having really restricted lines and manoeuvres of fire, but Frank could actually concentrate on a couple of areas at a time. So I was really in a big hole from turn 2 onwards, really. So I think the list needs a bit of an overhaul. I think German medium tank formations do struggle a bit. You just seem to pay a couple of points more over the cost of a platoon than what they're actually capable of doing. There's a lot of high allied anti-tank, and when you try factoring all the combined arms, so for example, a lot of allied formations can fit in artillery with the tanks quite cheaply. With Germans, you need to spend at least 9 points on the battery, then an observer, so that's 10 points gone already. You want to squeeze infantry in as well. You know, all that aspect means that you end up with a very frail formation. And I think a Wehrmacht medium armor list needs a lot of finesse, and I didn't play with finesse. far from it.
It was a really tricky table for you as well. That town, like in retrospect, that time was really difficult to move through, and that's where your reserves were coming. It looked great because you had the speed charging up that road, but once you got up there, it was like, oh, where am I going to go now?
Yeah, now what to do? Yeah.
I think when I saw you doing your spearhead moving everything out to cover that other objective, that's when I decided, right, not going to go for the long game here. I'm just going to go for the short game and charge the objective. There wasn't a screen of infantry to protect the elephant, for instance. So I thought, I'm going to go for it. I think you could have left that hanging and your reserves could have covered it.
Yeah,
because they were immediate reserves. The amount of time it would take me to get over. But once the game actually started opening up, I think that time was a real headache for you, and I'm glad I wasn't fighting in it, I can tell you.
Yeah.
And then in terms of my own list, I like doing these sort of medium tank games, where we're medium tanks battling against each other. Like there was so many times where we both needed a 6 to bounce a shot, and got a 6. Those two Panzer IVs that were in the crossroads at the end of the game, the amount of fire that went into them, and there was still one left. So I like that as opposed to just a couple of big lumps of heavy tanks moving around the table trying to outmaneuver each other. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the list. I was thinking at the start, do I take the 75mm artillery for smoke, or do I just take the heavy hitting 100s? In the last game I played, I had 3 sources of smoke. So I overdid the smoke, so I thought I'll leave it out, but I maybe would put the 75s in. It's the same price and points. Just for not every game you're going to get to do a charge, but there might be a time where you just need that smoke, just to get yourself into the right position. One turn might do it, or you might not range in at all, as I have done in the past. I went, oh no, before the anti-tank gun staring at your tank's flanks,
Yeah, that'd be very useful against a pack front, for example, and things like that. That would get you in a lot of good positions very quickly. And then when you're trying to deal with 2 full platoons of infantry and what was it, 11 Panzer IVs? Yeah, that's a lot of stuff to try deal with all at once. My Vesps are having to do all sorts of shenanigans, and they didn't even bombard once during the game. So. Yeah.
That's a record, Tom. I don't think I've ever seen that.
In fact, I think the Panzer III OP killed more infantry with his machine guns than it did with.
He sniped off a Shrek.
Yeah. So.
And just because of that, I broke his barrel off when I was moving it. I thought, you wee swine, you. So I went, snap. Cool. There you go. Food for thought for yourself there then, Tom, for getting the best out of that kind of list in German armour, and a bit more food for thought for me for using Romanian Panzer IVs. I quite like them. I think I'll be back to use them again. Right, anyway, Tom, thanks for playing.
Right, yeah. See you again soon.
See you again soon, and one day soon, maybe even in August, you never know, we might actually get some face-to-face gaming back in Scotland.
Oh, in real life?
Yeah. Aye.
I don't know what that's like anymore.
I'll send a proxy, right? And I'll just tell them what to do, and then I'll sit in like a wee screen in the corner.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cheers again, Tom.
See you.
So there you go, folks. The Battle of the Panzer IVs. Can we say who's better? The Romanian Panzer IVs, the German Panzer IVs? I don't think so. Not after one game. Certainly, you get more Panzer IVs for your points on the Romanian side, and there are challenges using medium tanks for the Germans, but they're all the same. They're all medium tanks. I think we'd have to try different missions. Probably not going to happen, but we'd have to try different missions to be sure what was the better formation, what was the formation with the most potential. And in that mission there, I just was able to mob Tom's Panzer IVs because I was the attacker. He was in defence in a difficult set of terrain. I'm quite happy with the list. I think I'm going to keep it pretty much as it is, except change the 100mm artillery for 75 to get smoke. There's a loss in the punch behind the artillery, but that extra smoke is much more useful when I am such a large force of tanks who just need to get to the important place, the important point on the battlefield in good good order and good condition. And another dead elephant, guys. You've got to be careful how you use elephants. 1 is not going to do a lot of damage by itself. 2 is better but eats up the points. And you must have them behind either some kind of terrain or a line of infantry to stop yourself getting outflanked, because then they become very easily knocked out. But there you go, folks. A good game, enjoyable game. Hopefully you enjoyed the report. Hopefully you've subscribed already. Thanks if you have. And if you haven't, think about doing that, folks, to help us increase the reach of the channel and get it out there to more people who enjoy this kind of content.